So with that little comment, I'm here today and next Sunday, the end of the year, the beginning of the next. I thought I'd try to do some things with regard to the passing of 2020 and the onset of 2021. So as I thought about this, you look to the past, you look at what happened, what didn't happen, events, so on. There seemed to be good news to talk about, but also bad news. And so that's where the title of this came from: good news, bad news, and then fake news. So I said to Joe, I wonder what the congregation would like me to start with, the good news or the bad news. And he said, well, why don't we take a poll? So those of you who are congregants at CUUC received this poll, and you chose whether to go with the optimists, the good news, or the pessimists, the bad news. And then Joe contacted me and said, Don, I have the results of the poll. It's a tie. It's not one way or not the other. And so I said, Joe, let me just take it and I'll see what I can do about not putting together the bad and the good, but talking about them in parallel to one another. Now, I must pause at that point. The poll is a lie. I never asked Joe to do anything with regard to the poll. There was no poll. And if you're sitting there saying, I'm a member of this congregation, why didn't I get the poll? You are falling for fake news. And that's all I want to say about fake news. It's so easy to be led into believing something that really is not true at all. So let's put fake news aside. I don't know how you think about how I did that, but I had a lot of fun thinking about it and doing it. And my associate Frosty here is still smiling about it. So it must have had some value. So let's think about good news and bad news. I want to use two illustrations. One is from music, and the other is from a holiday card that I received from one of my students who lives in Austin, Texas. So first of all, I love music. You've heard me try to sing, and I make a lot of allusions to music. This has to do with two pieces of music. One's good news, the other's bad news. The good news is a song that goes back to at least Johnny Cash. And it's a song with a real lofty tune. It's called I've Been Everywhere. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere. Crossed the deserts bare, man. I've been everywhere. I've breathed the mountain air. Of travel, I've had my share. I've been everywhere. And then in the text, that's of course the chorus. The text is all the places that Cash has been. And there must be 80 or 90 of them. And it reminds me of a practice that I have been engaged in now for a number of years. With my spouse, do something really special once a month. And usually it was going out of town, going someplace. Sometimes it was going to California or North Carolina, or go visit relatives somewhere. A trip a month. Well, the last time was our wedding anniversary, Elaine and mine's wedding anniversary in March, before, what happened. And we went to the beach and spent 2 nights and had a great time and celebrated. But things happened. There have been no trips anywhere since March. We hardly do anything but stay home, do projects around the yard, talk to the feral cat who just was here to my right in the windowsill, and watch more TV than I have ever watched in my life. It's been a downer. But then a couple weeks ago, I came across the quarantine song of a singer who was using the tune of Johnny Cash's I've Been Everywhere to a song called I Ain't Been Nowhere. This is Chuck Mead, who was one of the founders of the group BR549, if you follow low class music. And it goes something like this. And I'm going to try to do a little singing with it. I was traveling along, playing everywhere I could, when along came a virus and took away my livelihood. Somebody picked it up and spread it all around. And now for a while we all have to stay inside. You ask me how I'm doing and if I washed my hands. And I say, listen, but I've had about as much as I can stand. I ain't been nowhere, man, I ain't been nowhere. Been sitting in my chair, man, pulling out my hair, man. Sleeping, I've done my share, man, I ain't been nowhere. And then in the text, he sings about all the games that were played at home. And in the third verse, he sings about all of the things that he's watched on Netflix, Hulu, and all of that. And I thought to myself, I identify with this song. It's been a tough year in a lot of respects. But at the same time, it's not been all bad. And if we have eyes to see and ears to hear, you know this to be the case. Well, let's go to Christmas cards. Don't get very many of them anymore. But right after Thanksgiving, there's always the first cards. And two of them came from Alabama, from my family. And the other one came from Austin, Texas. And here's the way the envelope looks. It's addressed to Musser. And it is from a woman who is a professional, married with 2 children, and has the gall to send the emeritus professor Musser. But I have to tell you, Sarah, that's her name, was one of the most creative, radical, unstoppable, progressive, eclectic, and pleasant students I've ever had. Gave me a lot of challenges, and we would argue together. But it's from her that comes. She makes her own card. Here it is. There are 16 pictures on there, and on the back is the text. And the reason I am talking about this is that she captures in the first part of her message what it was like for her, and I identified with that, and I think a lot of us will. She writes, I almost have to have a magnifying glass to read this, but I can still barely get it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bitter that I'm writing a holiday card this year. By the time you receive this card, we were supposed to be transitioning from Thailand to Australia as part of our family gap year. They both, were stepping away from their careers and taking a year with the children in other parts of the world. It was supposed to be the year of no holiday card while we traveled to 13 different countries. And in its place, COVID-19. I usually feel sorry for myself for all 5 seconds, and then transition into feeling such sorrow about the suffering that others are enduring in a country that cares more about corporations than people, more about politics than public health. Now, this is a very sensitive, politically oriented, humanly oriented person. And then, phew, how's that for a negative Nancy start to a holiday card? So there's a lot of that kind of feeling. COVID ruined most of a whole year. It will be a whole year because it's not going to end in January or February. So there's a lot of negativity in the way people lived during this year. And so when we reflect on it, when we think about it, all of our lives have been limited. The freedom of travel has been minimalized. When was the last time you ate out in a restaurant? It has been, I think, back to March. We take out, but we don't go in. At our age and all the, medical history and stuff, not taking a chance. So everybody knows that's been the tone of 2020. Well, let me add something Joe said. I kind of lay myself out sometimes when I do this. Let me add personally in respect to what Sarah said. So I go to see my family practice guy for my annual checkup. Frosty didn't go with me, usually goes everywhere, but not to there. So I told him, I'm kind of wobbling. What do you mean wobbling? I said, I kind of stumble around. He says, well, and he put me through these tests. He said, I think you need to go see a neurologist. And I said, what's a neurologist? What do they do? Isn't that about your brain or something? So I went to see a neurologist. And the neurologist said, we need to do an MRI of your brain. I said, Doc, you're not going to find anything in there. I said, why would we do that? He said, yeah, we need to do this. So I got an MRI, and got all this blood work, came back, go to see the doc. I said, well, what do we have here? He said, well, I think you've got neuropathy in your legs, which means that the nerves are not connecting to the brain right, and you're tripping and not being real stable as a result of that. And so I said, really? I said, what do we do? He said, well, physical therapy. I said, there's nothing that you can really do to stop this. He said, there really isn't. How do you think I felt? Now, you people have known me for a long time. I'm active. I can't go fishing now because I'm afraid I might fall out of the boat. But I'm in physical therapy. And what day is today? Oh, Sunday. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be in physical therapy for an hour, and I'll be sweating like a swine at the end of it. What you do when something like this happens to you, you don't expect it. Well, personally, you kind of knuckle down. You say, okay, I've got this. You accept it. Oh, some of you who are old enough will remember the Swiss psychiatrist, Elisabeth Kubler-Ross. And you know what she spoke to us about and taught us how to deal with grief. And the thing about, the stages, some of you would know. How many are there? 5. One of them is denial. And the first thing we typically do when somebody says, you have a serious problem, we just can't believe it, face up. And sometimes we get angry. Get angry with the hierarchy, with the gods, or whatever. Get angry at your spouse, and go into depression. I've had a bit of depression. Just not feeling as up and at 'em as I usually am. I'm limited in what I can do physically. Lifting things up, I'll probably fall over. And then, okay, so you accept it. And when you accept the bad that has happened to you, and you remember all the good that has happened as well through the days of your life, you kind of get a perspective. And it is, hey, there is good news and bad news. And they both exist in our lives. And what we need to do is live with it. But you don't have to live alone with it. And that's why, like, wearing the mask is important and sanitizing is important, because it's just not your health. It's the health of everybody. I've been so inured into wearing a mask. I went into Publix the other day and forgot to put my mask on. I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I got out of there as quick as I could and went back and got my mask, because you feel solidarity. And when you know some people who have come down with the virus, and there have been passings of loved ones, and I can attest, I know about this. You have, with our suffering, a community, one of our favorite words in UU life, a community to which we are bound and who supports us, and we support them. And so, the point, it happens. You can put a couple letters on the it if you want to. I can't do that being Baptist. Sorry. Does. But so does Dolly Parton's song about love happens. And if there's anything we need at this time in our world and in our lives, it is the love of one another. And so, I'm going to get ready for physical therapy tomorrow, but I'm going to do my home exercises first. I've got one of them mushy pads. If you've done yoga, you know some of this. And I'm going to do all that and get sore for my own good. Next week, we will turn to looking not at the past, about the possibilities of the future. And for those of you who recently have been blindsided by something not good happening, you're in my thoughts and prayers. Amen.